Welcome to this special edition of the Journal Editorial Report as we look back on the highs and lows of the year. I'm Paul Gigot, and we begin with the 2020 elections, which saw a loss for President Donald Trump, but a better than expected showing for Republicans in down ballot races. So are there lessons to be learned from the election outcome, and where do the two parties stand as we head into the new year? Let's ask Wall Street Journal columnist and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. He served as senior advisor to President George W. Bush. Karl, you know that it's very rare in American history for presidents not to win re-election, yet Donald Trump was not re-elected. What's your Occam's razor analysis of why it happened?
Well, we're going to go to the whiteboard. Negative enthusiasm works just as good as positive enthusiasm. For the entire campaign, Trump voters said they were turning out to vote more as an expression of their support for President Trump than opposition to Joe Biden. Just the opposite for Biden. Most of his voters until the very end said their vote was more an expression of animosity towards Trump than it was support for Biden, but it didn't matter. Either way it worked. Both men had record turnouts and Biden won. Politics also remains polarized as a big lesson out of this. There's no kumbaya moment available at the end of this race. Trump supporters feel aggrieved and set upon, and Biden supporters are ebullient, and both of them think the other side is not the loyal opposition but the enemy. So polarized politics still.
But Karl, let me just follow up on that. So was this a personal defeat for the president, you know, his traits of governing, or a larger ideological defeat for the Republican Party?
No, more personal than ideological. I mean, if you looked in the internals, there were a lot of people, particularly in the suburbs, particularly college educated, and especially women, who said, I sort of like what he did, but I don't like how he handled himself, and therefore I'm going to either sit out the presidential race or I'm voting for the Democrat. We saw this in places as distant as Collin County, Texas, and Cobb County, Georgia, and Waukesha County, Wisconsin, and the suburbs of Philadelphia. Nominal Republicans who said, you know what, I just don't want 4 more years of it.
All right. Well, talk about the Republican coalition, because there are a lot of folks who think, you know what, Donald Trump may have lost the election, but he really has remade the Republican Party. It's now a very different coalition than it was when you were sitting in the White House. You agree?
Yeah. I agree. Both parties are fragmented, is what I'd say about that. And the Republican Party is fragmented because while it has gained support among blue-collar, working-class, some college or no college educated people, it's also lost among suburbanites, particularly in the suburbs, college educated. Similarly, the Democrats are being fragmented because the hard left of the Democratic Party, which is ascended at least at the House level and at some of the states levels, is not particularly attractive to a lot of people who have heretofore been Democrats. And how each party deals with that fragmentation in the years ahead, both parties are in trouble. They got to recognize they're in trouble and do something about it, because their coalitions are changing and unstable. You want them to constantly change. You want to be able to reach out to new groups of people, but the instability that's inside each party has got to be dealt with by calm and confident leadership. And I'm not certain either party has that right now.
Well, I see you got a point there about trust in institutions. That's obviously deteriorated, and we've seen it here in the wake of the election as well. That's and both parties have contributed to that by casting doubt on election after election, where they end up losing.
That's right. And look, also, just simply the common sense of the American people looking at institutions like the media and saying you're not really fair. And then, you know, the political warfare around the courts has also had an impact. So all of these institutions, if you look at it over the last 30 or 40 years, only 2 institutions seem to have either kept their support or gained in support, and that's the military and law enforcement. And you can't build a free and open society based on only those 2 institutions having the confidence of the American people.
You know, when you look at the Republican and Democratic coalitions, Republicans in particular here, are the unifying forces more cultural than economics or foreign policy? Because it seems to me that that is the case, and that means that you're seeing a lot more Democratic kind of tax and spending policies among Republicans.
Well, I think that may be the appearance, but I think it's a very open question. I think a lot of traditional Republicans, we're so tribal at this moment in American politics. A lot of traditional Republicans who are less government, low taxes, federalists, we want more power to the states, less power to Washington, have sort of said, I'm willing to accept things that run counter to my principles because my guy tells me to do so. Mm-hmm. And I think both parties are in that situation, particularly the Republicans, and that's going to be why the next 2 or 3 or 4 years are going to be interesting. How did each party sort it out? The Republicans, I think the smart people inside the Republican Party are going to be the people who say, now how do we keep this sort of blue-collar emphasis without surrendering fundamental principles? And that may be that's going to be a test of leadership, and we'll see how well everybody carries it out.
Karl, about 40 seconds left. Look at the Democrats, Joe Biden, the Biden Democrats coming in. Does Joe Biden have a majority governing coalition right now?
No, because look, what was his campaign about? I'm not Donald Trump, and he screwed up COVID. And as a result, all the normal things that we would have gone through since he secured the nomination in March, it didn't happen. There were no big layout of his agenda. There was no controversies that allowed people to get a sense of what this was all about, and which, by his defense, would strengthen their commitment to that agenda. So he's coming in with basically, I'm not Trump. And he's going to try and do things that people are not prepared to have done with them or to them. And that's going to be a problem for the former vice president, soon-to-be president, Joe Biden.
A volatile and unstable period in American politics. Thanks, Karl.